quite a lot of things to go through tonight, and a whole nation to offend, one of my favorite pastimes. So, without further ado then, first just a quick little housekeeping. I'm back on Social Galactic, so if you haven't joined the Social Galactic yet or don't have an invite, try and get one, join Castelia House Book Club or whatever. Obviously I'm on there as the Kurgan, and I've just popped back up on there. I'm not a huge fan of things like, Social Galactic is a lot better than Twitter, and it's a very cool platform, but I'm probably not going to be hugely active on it, but I'm there. So, ping me a message or keep in touch or whatever, or see what I'm up to. It's a good, quick place for me to post quick things or whatever. Right, without further ado, let us offend the whole of England. Now, one of the interesting things, and by the way, let me preface this by saying these are all just my opinions. Just my opinions. I've got no proof of any of this stuff, just my opinions. But I think they're pretty valid opinions because, you'll see why. Now, what surprised me a little bit was on Vox's blog today, right at the end of one of the posts he did about the Razy side, was that he didn't understand exactly what the pull that Meghan Markle had over Harry. He couldn't fathom it. Not that he didn't understand, he couldn't fathom it. Now, I can fathom it very well. And of course, in order to explain this to some degree, I'll have to, unfortunately, or for your amusement, reveal a few sordid facts from my past. But, I went through a period where I was just going through quite a lot of women on a regular basis. Every couple of days I'd have a new girlfriend or whatever. And, if you do that for long enough, you actually get a pretty good sense of what a woman is like just from looking at her face. Just from very, very tiny interactions, you'll have a pretty solid idea of what she is. And I'd also like to remind you that in ancient Greece, there was really no distinction between actors and prostitutes, nor should there be any distinction today, because essentially actors and actresses are whores. Now, I don't necessarily mean this in a disparaging way, because, I would much rather spend time, and I don't mean time with clothes off, I mean time as a human being, having a coffee, having a conversation with a prostitute than with, say, a day trader, or an investment banker. I have met plenty of both. I have spoken to plenty of both. And invariably, the prostitutes tend to be far more interesting people, and I would say more human people as well. Now, you may agree or not agree, you may think that's scandalous or not, that's besides the point. I'm telling you that from life experience of years, and because of work that I did that put me in pretty close proximity to actual professional prostitutes, I can tell you that, whores are quite decent people, aside from, look, you get all sorts, right? And obviously there's a pretty huge stigma in what they do, but they can be quite interesting human beings. That said, I don't think Meghan Markle is one of them. I think she's a gold-digging whore, and I think that it's pretty obvious. And her true nature can be seen a little bit in the thumbnail that I'm using for this video. If you zoom into it or whatever, or just Google Meghan Markle angry face or whatever, and you'll find that picture. You can zoom right in and you can see her true nature. There's other pictures where she's looking at Harry like, that's my meal ticket, I just have to bite down hard now, and that's what I think of her. There is also rumors that the kid is fake, that Archie is not her kid, that she just had a pretend pregnancy and all that, which, it was really suspicious the way everything was done. So I think there is a very good likelihood that that's true. And as we all know, Prince Harry is really very, very, very unlikely to actually be Charles's son. So I don't think any tears will really be shed about him divorcing himself from the larger royal family. Especially since Meghan Markle, being the nasty, cheap, dirty little whore that she is, and make no mistake, I'm sure she has all the skills of a dirty little whore. I've got enough experience that, one look at how Meghan carries herself and what she does and how she talks and how she fake smiles. There's no doubt in my mind that Meghan Markle has taken plenty of dick in every orifice that she's got, in every position, possibly multiple ones at a time too. That's just my opinion. But that is, whether you like it or not, actually the pull that she has over Harry. Now, why would she have such a pull over Harry? I mean, he's a prince. He could have any woman he wants. He's, I'm sure he's had debauched parties. Well, here's the thing. I've actually been standing about 3 feet away from Harry on one of my random evenings where I was just going home from work and I thought, I'm bored, so I'm just gonna pick up some girls. And so I started talking to this 2 girls that were at a bus stop, and they were going to a club, and they asked me to come along with them and so on. And then I went with them, and they kind of sandwiched me on the dance floor, and I was kissing one of them, and then we left there and we went to another place. One of the girls had a boyfriend, so she was like, oh, I wish I didn't have a boyfriend, like you could come home with me, blah blah blah, whatever. But the boyfriend called, and I guess she had guilty pangs or whatever, and she, I didn't do anything with her. But anyway, we went to this other club where her boyfriend could get us in, and it was a very VIP club or whatever. And as we went there, just as we were going in, Harry was coming out, clearly plastered, had a few drinks in him. And this was when he was still with a blonde girl whose name I couldn't possibly remember, even if my life depended on it. Anyway, I saw him pretty up close. He's tall. He's taller than I am, I think, and I'm 6'2". Quite thin at the time. He's beefed up a little bit. But it was painfully obvious to me that he is your kind of typical Englishman. And here's where I offend the whole nation. Now, don't worry, if you're Polish or any other nation, just bring it up in the comments and I'll do your country next. I've got one for everybody. Now, the problem with English is, they're quite a logical and relatively shy people. But the problem with English, of course, is the men. The men are completely ballless and always have been completely ballless. As a result, their women have had to take on some of the, ball-carrying duties, which doesn't make for good bedfellows. When a woman starts to have to deal and do some of the things that the men are too ballless to do, invariably she gets pretty bitter about it. Now, there are some slight positives in that, because women in England, for generations, for millennia probably, right down all the way to Boudica, the Romans invaded, and who tried to fight back? A woman, one of their queens. Like, sad specimen. So because the Englishmen's balls have never dropped, the English women have had to take on some of those roles. And that's not natural for a woman. It's not good. It's not what they want to do. And as a result, they pretty much despise, to a certain extent. It's a lot of it is very unconscious, but they sort of are quite happy to denigrate their own men. Things that they wouldn't dare to do when a dark, handsome, tall stranger comes along. Should we say, perhaps not dark, just a little bit suntanned. And they will then, lay themselves out in every position possible because, oh my God, he's like a man. And they don't even really know why this is going on inside them. And sometimes that starts to happen, and then they get angry with themselves, and they'll try and fight with you because, women, emotions and so on. But the thing is, because the men are so kind of ballless, and because they're all a kind of a shy, I don't know if it's the cold climate that makes the Anglo-Saxon Teutonic races such freaks, but, they're not very natural as a people. Now, obviously, there are exceptions because, hey, I'm married to an English girl. But as a general rule, English women are considered quite loose and nasty, and they are indeed, but there isn't that same kind of intentional whorishness or sluttiness that a Latino woman would have. So a Latino woman can present like a lady, but almost as a general rule, again, almost all Latino women know what to do in the bedroom, because they're like, hey, there's different rules in here. In here, anything goes. In here, making the guy happy counts. Making me happy counts. Getting him to do all the nasty stuff I like counts. Getting me to do all the nasty stuff he likes counts, And they're into it. And there's just a natural sort of sexual vibe always going. With English women, sometimes that's cut off because literally they're kind of taking care of business. Now, the upside is that English women can be quite logical. They can be quite objective for, as far as women go. And I would say that possibly the only other nations that I've come across that have that level of objectivity, or maybe even more, are Russians. Russian women can be extremely objective, but at the same time, Russian women are very feminine. So they'll be very objective, and then they might stab you in the night because you've upset them, But they'll do it very cleverly. They'll wait for you to be asleep to make sure that you don't get a fighting chance. So, and, for Western men, Russian women are considered gold-digging sharks. But the reality is, yes, they are, if you're a weak, ballless little man. If you're a man, I've had several Russian girlfriends, and I remember one of them was quite direct about it because we talked about all sorts, we talk about everything. And she was like, well, yes, of course. If you're a weak man, you will become my doormat. The way she said it was like, what do you call that piece of cloth you put in front of door to clean your shoes? That, doormat. That's it. Man will become doormat if he's weak. Of course, I would never do it to you, because she knew where she stood. It's like, but, of course, weak men are there to be eaten, chewed up, spat out. What else is there to do? And I quite like the Russians as a people because they're very objective. At the same time, they're quite spiritual and they can be quite direct and honest as well. They can be lethal sharks, but kind of that's their nature. You can't blame a shark for being a shark. If you're too stupid and you don't understand how a shark works, that's on you. If you understand how a shark works, you're perfectly safe and you're fine, But when it comes to English people, the English man, even if he gets up to all sorts of debauched, filthy things, which being Nordic, they tend to be, they're nowhere near as disgusting as the Germans, of course. But English men can be quite twisted, perverse little guys. And they tend to be very much into the submissive sort of, slightly sodomitical kind of approach to life, I think. And again, for an English guy to be blunt, his dick sucked like the chrome's gonna come off it, is an unusual experience, especially if it's done with or by somebody who not only enjoys it, but is really good at it and can be quite mercenary about it, in that she can enjoy the activity even if she doesn't necessarily particularly love the guy, but she can make a good show. She is an actress after all. And that's all it is. It doesn't matter if you're a prince. And this is why I've always said, there's, was it Snake Eyes, the film with, what's that guy's name? Well, a film called Snake Eyes. It's got, It'll Come to Me, one of those famous actors. It's on the tip of my tongue. Anyway, the guy who did 8mm, and he's the guy who did Con Air. His name will pop up. I'm horrible with names. Anyways. And his Snake Eyes like, what do you want? It's like, sex, money, power, and drugs, And it's like, of all those things, what matters the most? What would you rather be? I'm going to put it to you kind of as a slightly different version of the choice that Paris, the Trojan, my ancient ancestor, had from the three goddesses, right? The three goddesses were Aphrodite, Athena, and Hera. And Hera said, that they were competing about who's the most beautiful woman in the most beautiful goddess, and they picked him because they knew he'd tell the truth, or he was a good judge of women's beauty or something. And Hera basically said, being the wife of Zeus, if you pick me, I'll make you the most powerful man in the world. They all tried to bribe him, typical goddesses. Athena said, Hera said, I'll make you the richest man in the world. I think it was Athena that said, I'll make you the most powerful man in the world. That is, you will conquer all the other lands and blah, blah, blah. And Aphrodite said, I'll make the most beautiful woman in the world be in love with you, fall in love with you. And Paris, being a Trojan, he picked love, which is the correct choice in my opinion. I mean, if you asked me, would I want power, money, or the true love of a really, really beautiful woman that suits me, yeah, I'd pick the woman too. Now, of course, goddesses being goddesses and nasty bitches that they are, they forgot to mention the little fact that obviously this woman was already married to a very powerful man who also had a very powerful brother, and they would siege the crap out of their city for this little outrage of cuckolding. So there's that. Now, I pose it to you. What's the most important thing for a man to have? Some people think money, some people think power, some people think love, but removing the external world, so no other people, if you're gonna say love, okay, but then it would have to be a kind of internal sense of love, right? If you said power, yeah, okay, but it would have to be your ability to either conquer countries or whatever, however you define power. Now, I want you to think about that for a second, and how would you define what would you want? For you as a man, what would be the be all and end all? Is it money? Is it power? Is it love? What kind of power? What kind of love? And so on. And for me, it's been a kind of power, but it's not the power that you have necessarily over other people or to conquer countries. It's an internal thing. The way I define it is having a set of balls, just having balls. And, I've pretty much spent my life making sure that that's the case. What does it mean? Why is that important to me? Because a person like that doesn't need really much in the world, doesn't really need the rest of the world that much. They say that no man is an island. It's probably true, but I'm certainly at least a peninsula, or kind of Venetian. It's kind of an island. There's some connections to the mainland, but we kind of do what we want, and that's important, of course. And of course, it goes to the social sexual hierarchy and whatever. But if you've got balls, really the only way to stop you is to kill you. The only way to get you down is to make sure you're dead, because I would hate to have somebody that actually has a pair of balls to be my mortal enemy, because that guy will either kill you or die trying. And now that's a dangerous opponent. The example that I think I've mentioned this before, pizza boy theory. It's like my brother and I came up with this thing, pizza boy theory. You should, like the old samurais, the old Japanese, treat everybody respectfully, because you just don't know. You might be a huge, powerful mafia don. You might be the president of America. You piss off the wrong guy. You kill the wrong person. You do something outrageous to the wrong individual who might just be a pizza boy. But that pizza boy might have a really good set of balls on him, and he will take you out, even if it means that he gets taken out with you. That, to me, is the most telling aspect of a man. And clearly the English do not really understand this point at all. As a result, it plays out in their social sexual life. And when they do find a slutty girl that looks, half decent or does it for them, and you can be attracted to Meghan Markle or not. I think she's, fairly attractive. She's nothing particularly special, but she's got a pretty smile, if you don't realize that it comes in 5 rows of teeth in there. But and if that does it for you, if physically she's attractive for you, and she does stuff to you in bed that not only have you never had done to you, but you just have never experienced to that level, to that intensity, you're gonna get brain fucked. Or as my grandfather used to say, I'll tell you in Venetian, un pelo di mona tira più che un carro di buoi, which means a pussy hair pulls harder than a whole cart of oxen. And kind of true. So that's what the take is there. Now, you might think it's ridiculous that a man of that level of status gets himself embroiled and destroys his family connections, pretty much his life, as a result of just some random divorcee, hard-used pussy and ass that have both been used hundreds of times, in every shape, way, and form, thousands of times, I would guess. He's going to ruin his whole legacy for this nasty little whore? Yeah. And probably the royal family doesn't care too much, because it is well known that it's extremely unlikely that Harry is actually Prince Charles's son. So, no one really gives a shit. It's kind of good riddance. But it's just going to be interesting. I mean, it happened pretty quick. We all knew it was going to be a car crash, but the level of speed at which it's happened is amazing. And you see, the problem with people like Meghan Markle is that they are stupid. That's the problem. They're not just money hungry, greedy, ambitious beyond any sense, but they are stupid. They don't understand. They just assume that I've reached the top and now I can have whatever I want. No. It doesn't matter where you fall in the scheme of the hierarchy of things. You can be born a billionaire and you can still be bullshit. I have met billionaires. I've worked for some billionaires. And one billionaire I met actually had his own set of balls too. And that was a very interesting guy. I'm not going to mention his name, but I wouldn't say he was any kind of a saint by any stretch of the imagination, but he's somebody I could have some respect for, because he definitely took the world on. The fact that he was a billionaire, of course, helped, was incidental, but I would say it was incidental. He was a man's man. So there are people like that. And the thing is, at those levels, if you want to be operating, actually doing shit at the millionaire level, you got to be competent and you got to know your limitations. It's the dirty Harry thing again. Harry, being a poor, clean white boy, not being dirty enough, doesn't understand his limitations. And so he's getting hoodwinked by a nasty little dirty whore, which I'm sure is a lot of fun in bed. But that's really all she is. And, you should bang her and keep her down, with a pimp hand. Now, don't interpret that as violence. It's not what I'm saying. Just saying, he obviously hasn't got the ability to dick down a nasty, cheap little whore. If you know what I'm talking about, and you're a guy, you know what I mean. Even the dirty little sluts can be dicked down properly so that they're the ones that have the sexual experience they haven't really had before, regardless of how many dicks they've been with, because there is an element of genuine empathy and I don't know what to call it. Empathy is not good enough a word. It's more of an actual understanding of the depths of the person, however deep or shallow they are, and linking up with them and sort of being able to meet them where they are, sexually, emotionally, spiritually, and being able to do it genuinely. That is what will get a woman to feel stuff. The simpler women, you can just make them squirt a few times and they think they're in love. The more complicated ones, or the ones that have been, abused, I would say is the right word. If they've had, a couple of hundred lovers, there is a certain level of desensitization that goes with that. Sexually, certainly. Physically, certainly. But emotionally, they also get desensitized, and somebody who can actually plumb their depths, and I don't mean just carnally, but can plumb their emotional depths perhaps while at the same time also doing it physically, that is, something that will affect a woman. And those women who are beyond feeling anything on that level are really things you should absolutely stay away from. You might as well, fucking copulate with an actual demon. It's really a bad choice of things to do. So there you are. That's sort of my take on Meghan Markle and Harry. And like I said, you just look at her face in that little thumbnail and you sort of see what she's really all about. And the fact that, English women are the way they are because of English men. English men are just weak, little weedy, ballless little men. And they're just, as a result, their women are kind of slutty, slaggy, and they get frustrated. To a certain extent, English women are upset. They're angry with English men because it's like, oh, well, he's just, and that's why they make so much fun of them, and that's why the whole sort of feminist thing. But the thing is that English women, although, in my debauched ways, I've only actually, I was never really interested in English women, and I only had 2 very brief encounters that lasted some hours, if that, a couple of hours probably, with 2 English women, and then, and the third English woman was my wife, so, who is quite a different person, but, from the other English women that I've met or even talked to. But I never really found, as a general thing, obviously my wife being the exception, I never really found English women that attractive, because I found them almost too basic, too simple, too like sexually, emotionally, it's kind of like wham bam, thank you man, because that's kind of all they know. And then if you do make them feel something a bit more, they get completely mind fucked, that's why it's kind of weird, but English women will denigrate their own men quite easily, and then along comes a slightly olivine skinned tall dark stranger, and they'll mend his socks and make him dinner and won't even breathe a word about feminism. It's kind of how the cookie crumbles. So it's an interesting situation anyway, and I'm sure that the car crash will continue, probably not even in slow motion. Good old Meghan, hey? Well, I guess we're just gonna have to sit back and get entertained by this tragic drama of the royal family. I don't particularly feel very sorry for them, although I do feel a bit sorry for, to a certain extent, William and Harry didn't really have much of a chance, did they? Especially after their mother died. Everybody's very critical of Diana, but I liked her. I don't care what anybody thinks or says. I quite like Diana. She, I believe, did try to, make things work, and I think Prince Charles is your typical Englishman. I mean, the guy was recorded on a phone call telling Camilla Parker Bowles that he wished he was her tampon. I mean, you're a fucking tampon boy. It's a goddamn walking advert for Tampax. It's just sad, and that's what I mean about English men. That's like, what the fuck? Yeah. So there you go, England. Thanks for having me. Now, don't worry. If you're Polish or Greek or whatever nationality you are, and you feel that I have not offended your country enough yet, just let me know in the comments, and I'll probably do yours next. It's I've got something for everybody. Don't worry. I'm egalitarian in that respect. Except sort of for the French and the Polish, because they deserve a bit more crap than everybody else. But there you go. I think that's me done for tonight. And I'm going to try and make some more interesting videos on more relevant things next. I've got quite a few projects on the go at the moment that I'm trying to get out, which I sort of want to surprise you guys with. So we'll see how that goes. Anyway, good night.